Hey everyone, James from TDB here, bringing another Inbetweenisode. Today I am going to be talking about a recent article that I wrote about matching with the right kind of pu'erh. So go ahead, check that article out on tdb.org. The blog is indeed active as of early 2025. So what do I mean by this? Well, pu'erh is a very, very diverse group of teas. There's pu'erh that's fermented and ripe, and there's pu'erh that's older, there's different brands and stuff like that. So it's very complicated, and there's a lot of different profiles, and not everyone's going to like everything. There's a lot of personal preference. There's also a lot of like good tea versus bad tea. So not everyone is going to settle on exactly the same kind of pu'erh diet. So like, for instance, I drink very different pu'erh sometimes than Denny, although we converge on a lot of different teas too. And it's interesting to kind of look back and reflect on kind of the trajectories of what you're trying when you first got started. At this point, I've been drinking pu'erh for some like 13 years or so. So it's been quite some time. And when I first got started, all of the rage was really the boutique things. If you looked at the blogs, which was like Half Dipper at the time, it was very, very dominant with like, oh, here is the Yunnan sourcing line of X and X year. We're trying a bunch of these teas. Or you see Tea Chat, people talking about that. Oh, it's like this new vendor called Tea Urchin just started. Let's see what they're doing. And so a lot of the just kind of oxygen in the room was sucked up with like chatter about these different boutiques, specifically Western boutiques at the time. The Taiwanese boutiques had their period a couple years earlier with Hoda. So if you had tuned into Tea Chat in like 2008, 2009, would have seen that sort of chatter. And they would kind of make a comeback in the mid-2010s or so as well. So point being that there's a lot of just randomness when it comes to the types of tea that people are drinking. There are definitely teas that get hyped at a certain period of time and different teas that are sort of out. So like right now, Yangqing Hao, not really the hype tea. People aren't really talking about it because a lot of people have already had it. People don't necessarily have the highest opinion of it once they have other options and whatnot. There's a lot of different reasons that go into it. Some of them are good reasons and others are less good reasons. And it does shift and it does rotate, and sometimes it'll rotate back to certain teas. So my whole point is that there's a lot that you're at mercy of, especially when you are just getting started, which is one reason why I like to recommend that you sample a lot and you try a lot of different things. And it's important to kind of sample in good faith. You don't want to be like, oh, I've heard terrible things about factory pu'erh, but I'm going to try this anyways and just go in with the idea that this tea is going to destroy your stomach or something like that. Well, it's kind of inevitable that you are going to have certain preconceptions of the tea. I think it's important that you do try to enjoy the tea and try to give it your best shot. So don't just select the worst example of it. You can select hopefully a good enough example before trying. And that's certainly something that happens, I think, most stereotypically with something like ripe pu'erh, where we go to we find the cheapest thing we can find in Chinatown, which of course is just a very workmanlike and probably sort of nasty tea that if you rinse it once and you start drinking it, you're going to get a lot of that just ripe pu'erh stank in your face. Certainly not going to be for everyone, but that could be an example where the tea is simply not good enough, not that you don't like ripe pu'erh. Get lots of reps with different sorts of teas. If you had me guess back in 2014, 2015, what sorts of teas I would have liked and be drinking regularly, I think I would have guessed, not completely wrong, but somewhat differently from what I actually do end up drinking. So I think there's a lot of kind of wisdom to be gleaned from just reflecting back and thinking about what assumptions did I have about what I would like and where I actually ended up. For instance, I would say one change for myself is I was, of course, very boutique-centric and very boutique-focused for quite a long time during that learning period. And while I did have a fair bit of factory teas, and they occasionally made their way onto the blog or onto the YouTube channel, I eventually did have realized that factory teas should actually occupy a decent part of my tea diet because I actually like them. I think they fit pretty well. For me, at least, there's something about boutiques that require a lot of energy and stuff, and factory teas in comparison are a lot less fussy. So their workman-like nature actually works pretty well for my tea diet, and I also got exposed to better and better examples throughout time. So now it's like when I'm trying different pu'erhs and stuff like that, I'm okay spending up a bit more, accepting the diminishing returns that inevitably happen, and attempting to get examples that are just a bit better. So just pointing out that kind of match quality, as David Epstein points out in his book, what was that book called? Range. Yeah, Range, where he really focuses on trying a lot of different things before you find the thing that really, really clicks into place with you. And I do strongly recommend that. I think some people will go too fast and all of a sudden they're trying Be and How or something like that when they're like 2 weeks into drinking. And Be and How is fantastic. But you should absolutely kind of get your feet under you and get your baseline. I think that'd be an absolutely bizarre tea to just kind of start with. And not necessarily like it's way better or whatever, although you could argue that's the case. It's just different, and it has certain qualities to it. And so I think if you really want to understand Pu'erh and Pu'erh's appeal, I do think it is important to just try a lot of different types. And that you're not going to like everything, and I think that's fine. But I think giving everything a fair shot to some extent, I'm not saying try every single tea out there, I think is important. So at this point, I am rambling quite a bit, but hopefully you guys get the point that it's good to sample, good to try a lot of things, and good to keep an open mind. I'm going to close with the last kind of anecdote that I opened the article with, of how I've had a friend I've chatted with for many years. I think we first started chatting on Steepster probably 2015, 2016 range. So it's been about 10 years at this point. And then he sent me an email the other day. At this point, it's been a bit. But he was like, you know what I'm really liking? I'm really liking Shagwan. And it turned out he really hadn't given Shagwan a fair shot, even though that's one of the most obvious brands, one of the most available brands. But simply he had not been exposed to tea that was of good enough quality. So he had finally had the kind of good enough examples that would kind of lead him to really, really enjoy that. So it's really interesting. I mean, you wouldn't think that someone who has sampled all of these fancy boutiques and stuff would all of a sudden come down from the mountain and be like, you know what, Shagwan's pretty good. But that's more or less exactly what happened. So don't necessarily assume you are too good for certain teas or whatnot. So thank you all for tuning in. I will see you all next time. And let me know how you like this video. Cheers.